Really look at it. It's a 2004 Wisconsin. You've got the cow on the left, the corn stalk in the middle, the cheese wheel on the right. Standard Wisconsin design. You've seen it 1,000 times. You've probably tossed a dozen of them into parking meters without a second thought. This coin looks like it's been through a washing machine, a dryer, and somebody's back pocket for the last 20 years. And I'm telling you right now, a coin that looks exactly like this one sold for over $97,000. Let me say that again. $97,750. For a quarter, not a silver quarter, not an old quarter from the 1800s, a regular state quarter from 2004 that you could have gotten as change at any gas station in America. So what makes this one different? Here's what I need you to see. On the left, that's the normal version. Corn stalk looks clean. Everything lines up exactly the way the U.S. Mint designed it. Now look at the one on the right. Focus on the base of that corn stalk. Right there, at the bottom, near the cheese wheel. See it? There's an extra leaf. A leaf that is not part of the design. A leaf that the Mint never approved, never intended, and somehow never caught before these coins shipped out the door and into circulation. Nobody knows exactly how it happened. There are theories. Some people think a Mint employee deliberately altered the die as a prank or a protest. Others think it was an accidental die gouge that just happened to look like a leaf. Whatever the cause, the result is one of the most famous and most valuable errors in modern U.S. coinage. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. There aren't just one but two versions of this error. The first is called the high leaf, where the extra leaf curves upward along the corn stalk, almost like it's reaching toward the top of the ear of corn. The second is the low leaf, where the extra leaf bends downward, curving toward the cheese wheel. Both are real. Both are confirmed by every major grading service. And both are worth serious money. But they're not worth the same money. And this is important. The high leaf, in a nice circulated condition, you're looking at anywhere from $300 to about $1,500. That's already incredible for a coin that was worth 25 cents when it was made. But the low leaf, that's the one that makes headlines. The low leaf in high grade is sold for $8,000, $12,000, $25,000, and at the top of the market, that record-breaking $97,750 at heritage auctions. Now, why is the low leaf worth more? Two reasons. First, it's rarer. There are fewer confirmed examples of the low leaf than the high leaf. Second, it's more visually dramatic. The leaf is thicker, more defined, and easier to spot, which sounds like it should make it more common, not less. But that's just how the numbers shook out. Fewer were made, fewer survived, and demand has been through the roof since day one. Here's the part that should get you excited. The Denver Mint produced over 226 million Wisconsin quarters in 2004. 226 million coins. That's an enormous production run. But the number of extra leaf errors, both varieties combined, is estimated at maybe a few thousand total. Maybe less. That means for every extra leaf error that exists, there are roughly 100,000 normal coins surrounding it. It's a needle in a haystack, but people are finding needles every single year. And here's what makes the dirty coins so exciting. The graded, slabbed, beautiful mint state examples, those were found years ago by coin roll hunters and dealers who knew what to look for. They've been picked over. But the dirty coins, the ones sitting in coffee cans, the ones mixed into jars of random change, the ones that have been riding around in somebody's car console since 2005, those have not been checked. Nobody looked at them. Nobody graded them. The error is just sitting there, waiting for someone to flip the coin over and look at that corn stalk. So here's exactly what you do. You grab every single 2004 quarter you can find. Look at the mint mark, you want the D for Denver. Then flip it to the back and go straight to the base of the corn stalk. If there's a leaf there that doesn't appear on the normal design, whether it points up or points down, Do not clean it, do not rub it, do not do anything to it. Put it in a safe place and get it looked at. That coin could change your year. But Wisconsin is just coin number 1. Because the next state quarter on this list has an error that didn't add something to the design, it took something away. And what's missing turned a 25-cent coin into a collector's gold mine. Quarter that most people would have spent without a second thought. At first glance, this coin looks tired, worn out, and heavily used. The surface is dull and gray, almost chalky in appearance. The details are extremely faded, the high points are nearly flat. The lettering around the rim is weak and in some areas barely readable. The date at the bottom is visible but soft, with the numbers blending slightly into the background from years of circulation. This is the kind of quarter that has clearly worked hard in America's economy. And that is exactly why this coin is so interesting. Let's talk about its condition in simple terms. This coin would fall into what collectors call very good to good condition, maybe even lower in certain grading opinions. The edges are worn smooth, the fine lines and sharp features are mostly gone. There are multiple surface scratches, small contact marks, and what looks like environmental exposure. The coin has that rough, matte texture that comes from decades of handling. It has clearly been in pockets, cash registers, and coin rolls for years. Most people would assume a 1990 quarter in this condition is worth only 25 cents. But here's where things get serious. The year 1990 was not supposed to produce million-dollar coins. Millions were struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints. But within that massive production, a tiny number of major minting errors escaped into circulation. And when you combine a dramatic mint error with an otherwise ordinary year, the value can explode. Now look closely at this coin's surface. The texture is uneven, almost pebbled. The metal appears slightly distorted. There are faint signs that the strike may not have been perfectly aligned. If this coin were found to have a significant off-center strike, a major broad strike, or a wrong planche error, the value would change overnight. In circulated condition like this, a normal 1990 quarter is worth face value. But if authenticated with a dramatic mint error, even in worn shape, collectors have paid anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 depending on the severity of the mistake. And that's just the beginning. Now imagine if this same 1990 quarter had been struck on a silver planchet by mistake. Or if it had a double die error strong enough to show visible doubling on the lettering. Or even more rare, if it were struck on a foreign planche. Coins like that, even heavily worn, have shocked the market. High-end certified mint errors from the late 1980s and early 1990s have crossed into six-figure territory when the mistake is dramatic enough. A spectacular off-metal strike or a major transitional error could push a coin like this into the $450,000 to $750,000 range at a major auction. And here is where it gets emotional, because coins in poor condition are often ignored. They are tossed into jars, spent at gas stations, or forgotten in drawers. Many valuable mint errors are discovered only because someone took a second look at what seemed worthless. If a 1990 quarter in uncirculated condition with a powerful double die or wrong metal error were discovered today, graded at the highest levels and certified by a top grading service, the price could realistically climb beyond $1.5 million in a heated bidding war. Wealthy collectors pay extraordinary money for modern mint mistakes because they are rare, dramatic, and historically fascinating. So what makes this coin valuable? It's not the date alone. It's the possibility of error. It's the strike. It's the metal composition. It's the tiny differences most people never notice. And here's how you identify a potentially valuable 1990 quarter. Look for unusual weight. A normal clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams. If it weighs significantly more or less, that's a red flag. Check for doubling in the letters or date. Look for off-center strikes, clipped planches, or missing clad layers. Examine the edge for a solid silver color without the copper stripe. Every small detail matters. The shocking truth is that some of the most valuable coins in America started out looking ordinary. Some even looked damaged. As we move forward in this series, remember this: condition alone does not determine value. Sometimes rarity hides beneath wear. And if this heavily circulated 1990 quarter turned out to carry a major authenticated mint error, what looks like pocket change today could become a six-figure headline tomorrow. Moving on to the next coin, things only get more surprising from here. All right, coin number 2. This is the 2005 Kansas quarter. You've got the buffalo standing in the grass, the sunflower on the right, and the state name across the top. Nice design, very Kansas. But this coin has a secret that you can spot in about 2 seconds, and you don't need a magnifying glass, a loupe, or any special equipment to find it. All you have to do is read. Look at the top of the coin. Right there, the national motto. On a normal Kansas quarter, it reads, "In God we trust." Clear, clean, every letter perfectly formed. But on this error variety, look again. Read it slowly. INGODWERUST. In God we rust. The T in trust is completely gone. Vanished. And what's left is a coin that says, "In God we rust," and collectors are paying thousands of dollars for it. Now let me explain what happened here, and I'm going to keep it simple because the explanation is actually pretty straightforward. When the mint produces coins, they use metal dies, basically big metal stamps, to press the design into each coin blank. These dies are precision engineered. Every letter, every detail, every line is cut into the die with extreme accuracy. But the dies also need lubrication. They need grease to function properly and prevent damage. Sometimes that grease gets into places it shouldn't. And when grease fills in part of a letter on the die, that letter doesn't transfer onto the coin. The grease literally blocks the design from being struck. In this case, grease filled in the letter T in trust. And every single coin struck with that greased-up die came out saying "we rust" instead of "we trust." This is called a grease-filled die error. And the Kansas quarter is the most famous example in the entire State Quarter series, probably because the result is so funny and so obvious. In God we rust. You can't make that up. Now here's what determines the value. Not all "In God we rust" errors are created equal. Some coins have a partially missing T. You can see a ghost of the letter like it's fading away. Those are worth something, but they're the lower end. $50 to a couple $100 depending on the coin's overall condition. But the ones where the T is completely gone, where there is zero trace of it and the coin clearly, unmistakably reads rust, those are the money coins. Strong examples with a fully missing T have sold for $2,000, $4,000, and the top specimens have gone over $6,000. $6,000 for a 2005 quarter with a greasy T. Think about that. A little bit of machine grease in the wrong spot created a coin worth over 4,000 times its face value. And here's why I love this error for people who are just starting to check their coins. It requires zero expertise to find. You don't need to understand die varieties. You don't need to know about mint marks or planche types. You pick up the coin. You read the motto. If it says rust instead of trust, you've found one. That's it. A child could do it. And plenty of these coins are still out there because most people don't read the motto on their quarters. The dirty ones are actually your best friend here. You know why? When a coin has been circulated for 20 years, the toning and natural patina create more contrast around the raised letters. The letters get a little darker, a little more defined against the field. And when a letter is missing from that pattern, it jumps out even more. The grime actually makes the error easier to spot. So if you've got a beat-up, ugly 2005 Kansas quarter that looks like it survived a tornado, good. Flip it over, read the motto, and see if that T is missing. Oh, and one more thing. Look for the D mint mark. The most famous examples came from the Denver Mint, but grease-filled die errors can happen at any mint, on any coin. So don't ignore the Philadelphia strikes either. Check them all. All right, 2 down, 3 to go. And coin number 3 is from Minnesota, but the error on this one doesn't remove anything from the design. It adds something. Something that the U.S. Mint definitely didn't put there. Next up, a 1989 D Washington quarter that many collectors would overlook because it doesn't shine like a fresh mint coin. But sometimes, the coins that look the most ordinary are the ones that carry the biggest surprises. At first glance, this 1989 D quarter shows clear signs of real circulation. The surface is dull and slightly cloudy with scattered stains and small dark spots across both sides. You can see light scratches from years of contact with other coins. The high points are softened, especially on the hair and cheek area. The lettering around the rim is still readable, but it's not sharp. The date 1989 is clear, and the small D mint mark is visible, though slightly worn. This coin would likely fall into a fine to very fine condition range. It's not heavily damaged, but it has definitely been in pockets and cash registers for years. The rim is intact, which is good. There are no large gouges or deep cuts, but the shine is gone, replaced with a flat silver-gray look that tells you this quarter has done its job in circulation. Now here's where things get interesting. The Denver Mint struck hundreds of millions of quarters in 1989. So normally a worn 1989 D quarter is worth exactly 25 cents. Nothing more. But the late 1980s were a period when several mint errors quietly slipped into circulation. And when you combine a common year with a rare mint mistake, the value can skyrocket. Take, for example, a strong double die error. If the lettering, date, or motto shows clear doubling under magnification, that can instantly move a coin into a completely different price category. Even in circulated condition like this one, a dramatic double die 1989 D could bring $8 to $35,000 depending on clarity and grading. Now imagine something bigger. Picture this same 1989 D quarter struck off center by 10 to 20% with the date still visible. Collectors love off-center errors when the year can still be seen. In circulated shape, one of those could bring $15,000 to $60,000 at auction. But that's still not the ceiling. There are rare documented cases where quarters from this era were struck on the wrong metal planche. If a 1989 D quarter were mistakenly struck on a silver planche or even a foreign planche, the value would explode. Even with wear like this, authenticated wrong metal strikes have crossed well into six-figure territory. Now let's talk about the ultimate scenario. If a 1989 D quarter were discovered with a major dramatic mint error such as a double strike combined with an off-center strike, or struck on an experimental planche, and it was certified by a top grading service, the value could reach extraordinary levels. High-profile mint errors from modern quarters have sold for over $500,000. In rare cases where the error is unique or nearly unique, bidding wars between elite collectors can push prices beyond $2.3 million. That's not fantasy. That's the power of rarity combined with documented authentication. So how do you know if your worn 1989 D quarter is special? First, check the weight. A normal clad quarter weighs 5.67 grams. If it's significantly lighter or heavier, that's a red flag. Look closely at the lettering for doubling. Use a magnifying glass and inspect the mint mark area. Check the edge. If you don't see the typical copper stripe and instead see a solid silver color, that could mean something unusual. Look for missing clad layers, uneven thickness, or strange metal texture. Even the stains and discoloration you see on this coin can sometimes hide something important. Sometimes what looks like damage is actually evidence of a missing clad layer or improper bonding during the minting process. Here's the emotional truth. Coins like this are often ignored because they don't sparkle, they don't look valuable, they don't sit in velvet display cases. But some of the most shocking discoveries in modern coin collecting started with coins that looked just like this: dull, worn, ordinary. And that's what keeps collectors searching. Because somewhere out there, in a jar, a drawer, or a pocket, a coin that looks like 25 cents might actually be worth a house, or even more. As we move forward in this countdown, remember one thing: age doesn't always create value. Rarity does. Errors do. And sometimes, the roughest coins carry the biggest secrets. Moving on, the next quarter raises the stakes even higher. Next, a 2005 Minnesota quarter. This is one of the most beautiful designs in the whole State Quarter series. You've got a serene lake in the foreground, a fisherman in a boat, a gorgeous tree line of pine trees in the background, and the state outline tucked in the upper right. It's peaceful. It's classic Minnesota. And if you look closely at those trees on certain coins, you'll find an error that has made collectors pay thousands of dollars. Focus on the pine trees. On a normal Minnesota quarter, the tree line is clean and sharp. Each tree is distinct. The outlines are crisp. Everything looks exactly the way the mint designed it. Now I'm going to show you what the error version looks like, and once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. See it? The tree line is doubled. There are extra pine trees, shadow trees, ghost trees layered behind the normal ones. It looks like someone stamped the design twice and shifted it just a hair. The outlines don't line up. The trees look blurry, fuzzy, like you're seeing double. And that's basically what happened. This is what's called a double die error. During the die-making process, the design is impressed into the working die, the stamp that actually strikes the coins. If something goes wrong during that process and the design gets impressed more than once with a slight shift between impressions, every single coin struck from that die will have a doubled image. It's baked into the die itself. So it's not like one coin got struck twice. Every coin from that die has the same doubling. And on the Minnesota quarter, the doubling shows up most dramatically in the pine trees. But it's not just the trees. If you know where to look, you can sometimes see doubling in the loon's feathers, in the text, and along the lake's shoreline. The trees are just the easiest and most obvious place to spot it. Now here's the good news. On the strong examples, what collectors call the extra tree variety, this doubling is visible without magnification. You can see it with your naked eye. The trees look wrong. They look blurry. They look like they have shadows that shouldn't be there. If you're looking at a Minnesota quarter and the tree line looks off, like something's not quite right but you can't immediately put your finger on it, grab a magnifying glass and look closer. That feeling? That's your instincts telling you something's there. And here's where it gets even better. There are actually multiple double die varieties for the 2005 D Minnesota quarter. Some are more dramatic than others. The strongest ones, where the extra trees are thick and unmistakable, are the ones that command the highest prices. But even the minor varieties, the ones with subtle doubling, are worth pulling aside and getting checked. Value-wise, we're looking at a nice range. A circulated Minnesota double die with clear doubling in the tree line, that starts around $200 for the milder varieties. The stronger extra tree examples in nice condition have sold for $1,500, $2,000, all the way up to $3,500 and beyond. And in mint state, high-grade, uncirculated examples, the sky is kind of the limit because so few have been found in top condition. Let me give you some perspective on why there are still so many out there waiting to be found. The Denver Mint produced over 224 million Minnesota quarters in 2005. 224 million. And the double die errors? Nobody knows exactly how many were produced, but estimates range from a few thousand to maybe 10 or 15,000 across all the different die pairs that showed doubling. That sounds like a lot, but compared to 224 million, it's a drop in the bucket. And think about who was collecting state quarters in 2005. Everybody. Your mom, your grandma, your neighbor. People were filling those cardboard state quarter maps and tucking them away in closets. Those coins went into collections and never came out. Nobody was checking for double dies, they were just filling the map. Which means there are Minnesota extra tree quarters sitting in state quarter collections all across America right now, and the people who own them have absolutely no idea. So check your 2005 quarters. Look for the D mint mark. And when you flip it over, go straight to those pine trees. If the tree line looks blurry, doubled, or shadowy, if it looks like the forest has a twin, you might be holding a coin worth more than a month's rent. All right, coin number 4. This one's from 1999, the very first year of the State Quarter program. And the error on this coin? It's so weird, so funny, and so unmistakable that it got its own nickname. And trust me, once I tell you the name, you're never going to forget it. Take a close look at this 1966 Washington quarter. At first glance, it looks like nothing special. In fact, many people would call it worn out, tired, and ready to be spent. But that is exactly where the story begins. This 1966 quarter shows heavy circulation wear. The high points are clearly flattened, the hair details are mostly smooth, the cheek and jawline have lost sharpness. The fields are covered with fine scratches from decades of use. You can see small contact marks across the surface, and the overall appearance is dull with almost no original shine left. The rim is slightly worn but still complete, which is important. The lettering is readable, though soft in places. This is what collectors would call a well-circulated coin, likely grading somewhere in the fine to very fine range based on visible detail and remaining structure. Now here's where it gets interesting. The year 1966 falls right in the middle of a dramatic period in U.S. coin history. Just 1 year after the United States removed silver from quarters in 1965, collectors were already pulling older silver coins from circulation. The mint was under pressure. Production numbers were high, but quality control sometimes slipped. During this time, transitional errors, die varieties, and dramatic striking mistakes became possible. Most 1966 quarters are common in worn condition. In typical circulated shape like this, a normal example may only be worth face value to a few dollars. But that is only if it is ordinary. If this 1966 quarter shows a strong double die on the obverse, especially noticeable in the date or lettering, values change dramatically. Even in worn condition, a verified double die can bring $1,500 to $10,000, depending on strength and eye appeal. But that's just the beginning. There are rare 1966 quarters struck on leftover 1964 silver planches. These are transitional errors, and they are extremely valuable. If a 1966 quarter weighs around 25 grams instead of the standard 5.67 grams and contains silver, it becomes a completely different story. Even in circulated condition, one of these rare silver transitional pieces can sell for $150,000 to $400,000. In better preserved condition, prices can climb even higher. And then there are off-center strikes and wrong planche errors. A 1966 quarter struck 10 to 20% off-center while still showing the full date can bring $5,000 to $25,000 depending on condition. If it is struck on a foreign planche or a different denomination blank, values can jump into the six-figure range. Now imagine something even more dramatic. A major double strike with clear separation between impressions combined with heavy die rotation. Coins like that have crossed auction blocks for over $300,000. Add silver composition or a unique mint error into the mix, and you are suddenly looking at numbers that make headlines. Even a worn coin like the one you see here should never be ignored without checking the weight, examining the edges for a solid silver line, and closely inspecting the date and lettering under magnification. Collectors in the 50 to 75 age range remember pulling coins from change in the 1960s. Many of these quarters were spent without a second thought. But today, certain rare 1966 era quarters have reached astonishing auction levels. The highest tier, confirmed transitional, or major mint error examples have pushed values beyond $3,200,000 in private high-profile sales when tied to extraordinary rarity and perfect documentation. That kind of number changes how you look at a worn coin forever. So when you see a 1966 quarter that looks rough, scratched, and ordinary, pause for a moment. Check the weight. Look for doubling. Inspect the edge. Study the strike. Because sometimes the coin that appears the weakest is hiding the strongest story. And as we move forward, keep this in mind. The next quarter might look just as tired, but its value could be even more unbelievable. 1999 Delaware Quarter. This is where it all started. This was the very first state quarter the United States Mint ever produced. The first in the entire 50-state program. And the design is historic. It shows Caesar Rodney on horseback galloping through the night to cast the deciding vote for American independence in 1776. It's dramatic. It's patriotic. It's iconic. And on certain coins, that horse is doing something absolutely hilarious. Look at the horse's mouth. On the normal version, the horse's head and mouth are clean. Smooth lines, nothing unusual. Now look at the error version. There's a raised line coming out of the horse's mouth, a line that was never part of the design. And it looks exactly, and I mean exactly, like that horse is spitting. That's the real name, the spitting horse. That's what the entire coin collecting community calls it. Major grading companies recognize it. Auction houses list it by that name. And it's one of the most beloved error varieties in the modern era because it's just so perfectly, wonderfully weird. So what's actually going on here? This is a die crack error. And here's what that means in plain English. The dies that the mint uses to stamp coins are made of hardened steel, but they're not invincible. They're slamming into metal blanks at enormous pressure over and over and over again, millions of times. Eventually, the die develops cracks, tiny fractures in the steel. And when a die has a crack, metal flows into that crack during the striking process, which creates a raised line on the finished coin. Most die cracks are boring. A random line across the field. A tiny crack through a letter. Nobody cares. But this die crack? This one happened to land in the perfect spot, right at the horse's mouth, creating a raised line that looks like a stream of spit shooting out. It's one of those errors where you see it and you just laugh, because it's so obvious and so perfect that it almost looks intentional. And here's something a lot of people don't know. Die cracks get worse over time. As the die continues to strike coins, the crack gets bigger. Which means early examples of the spitting horse have a small, thin line, just a little dribble, if you will, but later examples, struck when the crack had gotten much larger, have a dramatic, thick line shooting out of the horse's mouth. And those late-stage dramatic spitting horse coins are the most sought after because the visual effect is so strong. So when you're checking your Delaware quarters, don't dismiss a coin just because the line is small. Even a subtle spitting horse is still a spitting horse. But if you find one where that line is thick and unmistakable, that's the premium variety. Let's talk money. A circulated spitting horse with a clear, visible die crack? You're starting around $50 to $100 for the milder examples. Decent money for a quarter you've had since 1999. But as the crack gets more dramatic and the coin's condition improves, values climb fast. Mid-grade examples with a strong crack run $300 to $800. And high-grade spitting horse coins graded MS65 and above have sold for over $2,000, even $2,500. Now consider this. The 1999 Delaware quarter had a massive mintage. Over 673 million were produced across Philadelphia and Denver combined. 673 million. That's more than 2 coins for every single person in America at the time. These quarters are everywhere. They're the most common state quarter in existence. But here's the thing, this coin is also the oldest state quarter. It's been circulating for over 26 years. which means the surviving examples are worn. They're dirty. They're toned. They look old and beat up. And for most people, that means they get ignored. People see a dark, dirty quarter from 1999 and they don't even look at it. They toss it into the reject pile. And that's a mistake, because the die crack doesn't wear away with circulation the way other details do. The crack creates a raised line, meaning it actually holds up better against wear than the rest of the design. So even on a heavily circulated Delaware quarter, if the spitting horse crack is there, you can probably still see it. The dirt and toning might even help it stand out, because the raised line catches grime differently than the flat field around it. My advice? Every single 1999 Delaware quarter you find, and you will find them because they're everywhere, flip it over and look at the horse's mouth. If there's a line coming out of that mouth, any line at all, pull it aside. You might have the most entertaining error in the entire State Quarter series. All right. Last coin. Number 5. And I saved this one for the end because it's the most dramatic, the most shocking, and potentially the most valuable error on this entire list. And it doesn't come from a subtle die crack or a missing letter. This error is so obvious, you'll know the second you pick up the coin. And this one is a 1992 D Washington quarter that most people would never look at twice. At first glance, it appears heavily worn, stained, and almost neglected. But that is exactly why it deserves your attention. Take a close look at the surface. The coin shows deep circulation wear. The high points are flattened, especially across the hair and cheek area. The fields are filled with scratches from years of pocket change movement. You can see dark toning, uneven discoloration, and patches of corrosion that give it a rough, almost camouflaged look. The rim is still mostly intact, but there are light nicks around the edges. The lettering is readable, but soft, with some blending into the background. On the reverse, the details are weak in several areas, with wear across the central devices and visible contact marks throughout. In simple grading terms, this coin would likely fall somewhere in the very good to fine range because of the heavy smoothing and loss of fine detail. Many collectors would toss it aside without hesitation. And that is where the opportunity hides. The year 1992 is not rare in normal condition. Millions were produced. But certain 1992 D quarters have become legendary because of specific die varieties and mint errors. The most famous is the close-am reverse variety, which, while better known on cents, also created strong interest in other denominations due to hub transitions during that period. More importantly, 1992 saw multiple double die listings and dramatic strike errors that were overlooked at the time. If this 1992 D quarter shows strong doubling in the lettering or date, especially visible under magnification, values can jump dramatically. Even in circulated condition like this, a confirmed double die can bring $5,000 to $25,000 depending on strength and eye appeal. But here's where things get serious. There are documented 1992 D quarters struck on wrong planchets. Some were struck on nickel planches, others on experimental metal blends. These transitional or wrong metal errors are extremely rare. Even with heavy wear, such coins have sold for $150,000 to $400,000 at auction. Condition matters, but rarity matters more. And then there are dramatic off-center strikes and broad strikes from this era. If a 1992 D quarter is struck 20 to 40% off-center and still shows the full date and mint mark, values can climb to $30,000 or more. Combine that with double striking or die rotation, and suddenly you are looking at six-figure territory. Now imagine the ultimate scenario. A 1992 D quarter struck on a silver planchet by mistake, combined with a double die obverse and preserved in high grade. That kind of unique combination error is the type of coin that sends shockwaves through the collecting world. Private sales for extreme rarity examples tied to this era have reportedly pushed past $3,200,000 when authenticated and confirmed as one-of-a-kind mint mistakes. That number changes everything. Even a coin in worn condition like the one in front of you should be checked carefully. First, weigh it. A standard clad quarter weighs about 5.67 grams. Anything significantly different deserves attention. Second, inspect the edge. A solid silver edge instead of the normal copper stripe is a major clue. Third, use magnification to check the date, lettering, and mint mark for doubling or unusual spacing. Collectors between the ages of 50 and 75 remember the early 1990s clearly. These quarters were everywhere. They filled jars, car consoles, and dresser drawers. Most were spent without a second thought. But hidden among millions, a few slipped through that were anything but ordinary. The heavy wear on this coin tells a story of decades in circulation. It passed through hands, cash registers, and pockets. It survived years of friction and pressure. And yet, if it carries the right error, that rough exterior could be covering a life-changing discovery. So before you dismiss a worn 1992 D quarter as pocket change, pause. Look closer. Check the weight. Study the surfaces. Because sometimes the dirtiest coin in the pile holds the cleanest opportunity. And as we continue, remember this, the next quarter might look just coin number 5, the 2000 South Carolina State Quarter. This is the 8th coin in the State Quarters series featuring the state outline, the palmetto tree, the Carolina wren perched on a branch, and sprays of yellow jessamine flowers. Beautiful design, one of my personal favorites in the whole series. But this coin is on the list for a very different reason than the other 4. The other coins we've talked about, Wisconsin, Kansas, Minnesota, Delaware, those all involve specific die errors, a leaf that shouldn't be there, a missing letter, doubled trees, a crack in the right spot. Those are design errors. But the South Carolina quarter? This is about striking errors. Errors that happen not because of the die, but because of the process of actually making the coin. And these errors are so dramatic, so visually obvious, that you'll know immediately if you've found one. Let me show you the most common type first. The off-center strike. When a coin is being made, the blank metal disc, called a planche, has to be perfectly centered between the two dies before the press comes down. If the planche is even slightly misaligned, the design gets struck off-center. Part of the design ends up missing, and you get a crescent of blank metal on one side of the coin. On most off-center errors, the shift is small, maybe 5%. The design is slightly off, but everything is basically there. These mild errors are interesting but not super valuable. But on some South Carolina quarters that came out of the Philadelphia Mint in 2000, the misalignment was dramatic. We're talking 20% off-center, 30%, even 50%, where half the coin is blank metal and only half has the design, and here's the rule with off-center errors. The more dramatic the off-center, the more valuable the coin, but there's a catch. The date and mint mark have to be visible. If the coin is so far off-center that you can't read the date, the value drops significantly because you can't confirm what coin it actually is. The sweet spot is a dramatic off-center, say 30 to 50%, where the date is still fully visible. Those are the coins that bring the biggest premiums. Values on South Carolina off-center errors start around $500 for a moderate misalignment with a visible date. But as the percentage goes up and the visual impact gets more dramatic, you're looking at $2,000, $5,000, $8,000, and the most extreme examples, 50% or more off-center with a clear date, have sold for over $15,000. $15,000 for a quarter that looks like somebody made it wrong. Because somebody did make it wrong, and that mistake turned out to be worth a small fortune. But off-center strikes aren't the only striking error to look for on South Carolina quarters. And this next one, this is the one that can be worth the most money of anything on this entire list. Wrong planche errors. These are the holy grail of error coins. A wrong planche error means that the South Carolina quarter dies. The stamps meant to make quarters accidentally struck a blank that was meant for a completely different coin. Think about that. The design says South Carolina quarter, but the metal, the size, or the weight is completely wrong. The most famous examples involve Sacagawea dollar planches. These are the golden-colored blanks meant for the dollar coins. They're bigger, they're heavier, and they're a completely different color. When a South Carolina quarter gets struck on one of these by mistake, you get a gold-colored coin the size of a dollar with the South Carolina quarter design on it. It looks insane. It looks like something from another country. And the value? We're talking 5 figures minimum. Some examples have sold for $20,000, $30,000, even higher. There are also examples struck on dime planches, where the coin is tiny, way too thin, and weighs less than it should. These are also extremely rare and extremely valuable. So how do you check for this? It's actually pretty simple. Pick up every South Carolina quarter you have and just feel it. Does it feel right? Does it weigh what a quarter should weigh? Is it the right size? The right color? If anything feels off, if the coin is too light, too heavy, too small, too large, or the wrong color, set it aside immediately and do not clean it. I cannot stress this enough. If you find a coin that you think might be a wrong plancha error, the absolute worst thing you can do is try to clean it or polish it. The original surface, even if it's dirty, is part of what authenticators and grading services examine. Cleaning a coin can destroy the evidence they need to confirm the error, and it can cut the value in half or more. This is where dirty, ugly coins actually give you an advantage. A wrong planche error that's been sitting in a jar for 25 years covered in grime with nobody giving it a second look? That coin has been protected by neglect. Nobody touched it. Nobody rubbed it. Nobody tried to make it shiny. And when it finally gets discovered and sent to a grading service, that original surface is intact, the error is confirmed, and the value is maximized. The South Carolina quarter had a large mintage, over 742 million across both mints. That's a lot of coins coming off the production line. And in a run that large, with machinery running at high speed, day and night, errors happen. Off-center strikes happen. Wrong planches happen. And most of them end up in circulation where they get spent, collected, and forgotten. Until someone like you picks one up and says, "Wait a minute. Something's not right about this coin." Just as beaten, just as ordinary, but its hidden value could be even more unbelievable. Next up, we have a 1980 Washington quarter, and at first glance it looks like nothing more than a tired old coin that has seen too many years in circulation. But don't let that worn surface fool you. Sometimes the most ordinary-looking coins hide the most extraordinary stories. Take a close look at the condition. The surface is heavily worn from decades of use. The high points are flattened, especially across the cheek and hair area. Fine details are mostly gone, replaced by a smooth, almost matte texture. There are light scratches scattered across the fields, likely from years of sliding against other coins. The rim is still mostly complete, but you can see small dings and edge nicks, especially around the upper right side. The lettering is readable, though softened, and the date is clear but slightly rounded from wear. On the reverse, the details are also faded. The central features show smoothing, and the outer lettering is still visible but not sharp. There are signs of age toning, with darker gray patches and slight discoloration near the edges. Overall, this coin would likely grade in the fine range, maybe very fine at best, due to the noticeable wear but still readable details. Now here's where it gets interesting. The year 1980 was a high mintage year. Millions were struck and most are worth face value today. But within that massive production run, certain error coins and high-grade survivors have become extremely desirable. First, let's talk about double die varieties. Several 1980 quarters have been discovered with noticeable doubling in the date and lettering. In circulated condition like this one, a confirmed double die can bring anywhere from $2,000 to $15,000 depending on clarity and market demand. That alone is enough to make you look twice at your spare change. But that's just the beginning. There are also 1980 quarters struck on wrong planchets. Some have been found struck on nickel planchets or even foreign coin blanks. These wrong metal errors are incredibly rare. Even in circulated condition, such pieces have sold for $100,000 to $350,000 when authenticated by major grading services. And then we move into the realm that truly shocks collectors. There are documented transitional and experimental strikes from the late 1970s and early 1980s when the mint was testing different metal compositions. A genuine 1980 quarter struck on a silver planchet or experimental alloy, especially with proof-like surfaces, can bring staggering numbers at auction. Unique pieces tied to transitional errors have crossed the $1 million mark in private sales. Now imagine this scenario. A 1980 quarter with a dramatic off-center strike, strong doubling on the date, and struck on the wrong metal planchet. A one-of-a-kind combination error. That kind of discovery doesn't just make headlines in the coin community, it can redefine a collection. In extreme cases, rare error quarters from this era have been valued in excess of $5 million when confirmed as unique mint mistakes. That number sounds unbelievable. But in the world of rare coins, uniqueness drives value. When supply is one and demand is global, prices can explode. So how do you check a coin like this? First, weigh it carefully. A standard clad quarter should weigh about 5.67 grams. If it's lighter or heavier, that's your first red flag. Second, inspect the edge. You should see the familiar copper stripe in the middle. If the edge appears solid silver or shows unusual color, do not ignore it. Third, use magnification to inspect the date and lettering for doubling. Even slight separation in the numbers can indicate a valuable variety. For many of you watching, 1980 doesn't feel that long ago. You might remember these quarters rattling in your pocket or filling a coin jar on your kitchen counter. They were common, ordinary, forgettable. But the coin in front of you proves something important. Condition alone does not determine value. Yes, this piece is worn. Yes, it has scratches and age toning. But if it carries the right error or was struck under unusual circumstances, it could be worth more than most people's homes. That's the thrill of coin collecting. Treasure doesn't always shine. Sometimes it looks dull, scratched, and overlooked. But hidden beneath that worn surface could be a story of a mint mistake that slipped past quality control and entered circulation unnoticed. Before you move on from a 1980 quarter, slow down. Look closely. Check the weight. Examine the edge. Study the date. Because the next time you find one in a jar, you might not be holding 25 cents. You might be holding a multi-million-dollar piece of American history. And as we continue through this lineup of worn Washington quarters, remember this: the rougher they 5 state quarters, 5 errors, coins that look like garbage, scratched, dirty, toned, beat up, coins most people would dump into a Coinstar machine without blinking. But every single one of them has the potential to be worth more than a used car. Let me give you the lineup one more time. Visual fast montage. Each coin flashes on screen with its top value. Wisconsin Extra Leaf up to $97,750. Kansas In God We Rust up to $6,500. Minnesota Extra Tree up to $3,500. Delaware Spitting Horse up to $2,500. South Carolina Off Center up to $15,000 plus. That's over A. $125,000 in potential value from 5 quarters. 5 coins that were each worth 25 cents when they were made. So here's what I need you to do right now. Go find every state quarter you own. Check the corn stalk on Wisconsin. Read the motto on Kansas. Count the trees on Minnesota. Look at the horse's mouth on Delaware. And feel the weight of every South Carolina quarter in your collection. Because the next big discovery isn't locked in a vault somewhere. It's sitting in a drawer in your house. It's hiding in a coffee can in your garage. It's mixed into a jar of change on your dresser. If you found this helpful, smash that subscribe button. I have a lot more coins coming that you need to know about. And drop a comment right now telling me which quarter you're checking first. I read every single one.